aside, only scattered thoughts to hide. From time and quicker clock face hands, rain that turns it all to sand. Bit more life is in the can, hands outstretched we try to cram. Every last taste and scent and breath, rings of life, but every pledge holds its shadow and the line towards home is hard to find. 30 seconds is a lifetime on TV, and this is what I'd say if I had your attention. Please don't spend the hours staring at the distant shrines in shopping malls, the speechless saints on magazines and city walls.
Hello, I'm Deanna Cabarrus from Songwriting Lessons Online. I'm joined by Tommaso Zillio of Music Theory for Guitar. He is a guitarist, composer, and teacher who is fantastic at making music theory practical, creative, interesting, intriguing, fascinating, unexpected for players and songwriters of any level. I personally learned a ton from him over the years, and when he's been kind enough to come on the channel in the past, I've always had a lot of appreciation for the information and tips that he passes on. So I'm delighted to have him. And our topic today is how to write songs with more emotional color. And oh, my plant pot's just fallen over. And and it was quite well timed. And by that I don't mean I mean that in a very kind of tangible way. I don't mean, sometimes it's easy to think of the word emotional color and think it might be a bit abstract or might be a bit subject to opinion. But when he explains it, you're going to see that it's very concrete, very practical. It translates to something you're really going to notice, musically speaking. So that is very exciting. Let us know where you're from in the chat if you're here live. Thank you for being here, Tommaso. So,
Diana.
Why might songwriters care about modes?
Because modes help you express different kinds of emotions. Because just like you want to write some songs in major when they are generally happy or more solar or light, and when you want to write song in minor because you want to express sadness or negative feeling, etc., the modes offer you more shades in this palette and help you write songs that are more precisely tuned to the exact emotion you want to write. In fact, it's practically impossible today to be a good songwriter if you don't know at least something about modes, because a lot of pop songs, for instance, are written in Dorian. A lot of country songs are written in Mixolydian, okay, and often again those modes are mixed together. Plenty of pop songs in Mixolydian too, and even more extreme colors like Lydian or Phrygian or all the modes of the melodic minor scale are becoming more and more common. The point that often there are examples that everybody know about, or nearly everybody knows about those modes. So modes are not anymore a niche topic or something that only professional musicians study. Modes are becoming more and more what normal people use when they write songs. And the funny thing is that even if you don't know modes, often you are just picking up the sound from somewhere and you're just putting in an extra chord and thinking, okay, this chord is not in the key, but it works well. And then if you knew some music theory, you know you're actually not writing in key, you're actually writing in a mode, maybe Dorian. Okay, and that's the classic example. Okay, so here's the thing: modes help you express more feeling more precisely, and they have very characteristic and distinctive sounds that you have heard and that you like, and so you kind of need to learn them. The good news is that the modes are really not that hard to understand at the end of the day. If you are learning modes for, I don't know, guitar soloing and other thing, you need to go real in depth on a few things to make them sound properly. But if you're learning modes for songwriting, at the end of the day, the functional part of it, the working knowledge part of it, it's pretty simple. You just need to know what are the chords in the original major or minor key and how those chords change when you pick a mode that is close by to the original major or minor key. Because all the modes are either the major or all the modes of the major scale are either the major scale or the minor scale with one note change, which means essentially with out of the 7 chords you have in the key, 4 are the same and 3 are different, because changing one note changes 3 chords. And so once you know that, it's fairly easy to work with it. So that's why, essentially.
So basically, there's lots of things that we can't get out of a standard major or minor that we might want in our creative lives.
Yep.
And it's not something that's restricted to guitar soloing theory, and it's something that we're going to be able to implement without necessarily needing to absorb a whole lot of knowledge.
Exactly, but more than that, I see that the main problem many working musicians, songwriters, more advanced musicians have, not to say that songwriters are not advanced musicians, they can be, but many problem musicians have with music theory is that they learn major and minor. So they learn the major key, the minor key, and then they're like, but what we do in practice is different. And then they're like, so theory doesn't really serve anything for my purposes. And often it's because they're working with modes, even again, if they don't know it. And then like, okay, that's the major scale, but with this chord, or the minor scale, but with this chord. Okay, you're in a mode. Okay. So knowing that actually tells you how to go out of key, even if you're not really going out of key, but how to use those extra chords and how to actually work with it. So kind of the irony is that people learn exactly the theory that they don't use because it's the theory explained first in music theory books. But let's not forget the music theory books. Most of them were written for either classical musician or people with a classical culture, which doesn't really use mode much. You can totally go through an entire course of study at the university and not see modes. And again, those are simple. So that's the thing. That's the thing.
So if modes can be, we can kind of use chords in modes, or we can write solos in modes, what might a kind of useful working definition of a mode be? Or is it actually not that, do we not really even need to worry about that to use them?
I won't even worry about that. Okay, I mean, I would just think those are other new cool scales that we can use, and not worry too much about the definition of the mode being. I mean, there is a definition. A mode is a scale, another scale in which you change which note is the root. The notes are the same, just you start. They say start. It's not really starting, but you make sure that you play a chord progression that establishes a specific note as the tonic, as opposed to other notes. Now, notice that this definition is fairly abstract, okay? Not really clear what you have to do, okay? And it puts people off, but you don't need that. That's the point. You don't need that. This kind of insistence that we always define everything precisely first, it's nice, but we don't need that. After all, if I ask you or anybody a specific definition on what a scale is or what a key is, people are like, what?
Yeah, I mean, eventually you just get down to some notes. One comes first, then there's another one, and they're spaced a certain, and then okay, but then that doesn't really help very much. It's sort of fairly,
no, exactly.
You end up with such granular remarks that they're actually fairly pointless.
Exactly. So there are two things you need here. You need to know, well, that scales and keys exist and kind of determine what chords and notes you can use. And then which one are those chords and notes? Done. The definition, we can come later if you need to go deeper in that. Okay, again, we want working knowledge here. So rather than going like what those things are, it would be better to ask, what do I do with that?
Sure. So let's get into what do I do with it. It'd be interesting to look at chords and melodies. And you can steer me to the other one if you want to start with we think it's more helpful to start with the other one. But if we were to think about melodies, what are some examples of ways that it could help a songwriter to start from a modal point of view in writing melodies? And what would that mean for the songwriter to do if we're thinking? And how does that help us fine-tune the mood of the song?
I wouldn't even start with the melody. I would start with another thing.
Okay.
So, first of all, it's not well known. I mean, I know probably of 2 other teachers who talk about this, and only one of them is alive. So, I mean, but modes do organize in a specific order. Okay. And this order is called the order of brightness. Or at least that's how I heard it called from the teacher who's not alive anymore. Okay. And the idea is that the first mode in this order is the brightest one, and the last one is the darkest one. And particularly, you can order mode from brightest to darkest. And when I say brightest and darkest, I mean emotionally brighter and darker, meaning that the brighter mode will always sound happier, more energetic, more lighter, and the darker mode will always sound more somber or sad or desperate, all these kind of things.
I mean, this definitely sounds like something a songwriter would like to know about. Well, let me open my cupboard and get the brightest notes out. Well, let me open my cupboard and get like some dark notes out.
Well, again, if you stay on the mode on the major scale, the brightest mode will be Lydian. So I'm going to play all the mode in A, because I have the open string here. That's Lydian. Okay, and what chords I'm playing is just an A major, and then I'm playing a B major, but I'm keeping the bass of A, so I'm sure you hear A as the root note. And that would be Lydian. Okay, and this is.
If you're watching
again,
live, it'd be
now in
interesting
isolation.
to write in the chat what that makes you think of. If that was if that accompanied a scene in a film, what do you think what would you be seeing? So I think you'd be seeing like a sunrise. Somebody walking out into the sunrise.
When it's played slow this way, it does sound that way. This can, I mean, it's hard with only one instrument to express all the possible feelings. If you start putting percussions under this can become a heroic theme. Think of the Back to the Future theme. Okay, that one, and that's in Lydian too. Anyway, that's the brightest mode. If you go completely on the opposite side of the spectrum, we get Phrygian, and again, I'm limiting myself to the mode on the major scale. Phrygian start with an A minor, and after that puts a B flat. If I play something analogous as before. That's pretty dark. Okay, and again, I'm not even putting
not sunrise anymore. It's like I'm watching the ship go down.
Yep.
Standing on the cliff. The last bit of the mast is going beneath the water.
Yep. Now, the beauty of this is that since you have, and again, I'm limiting myself to the most on the major scale, and I'm also excluding Locrian because it's a very hard mode to use, because Locrian technically would be darker than Phrygian, but it's hard for some people to perceive exactly Locrian. There is a debate if Locrian actually exists or not. And anyway, so I'm just taking the non-controversial modes right now, okay? But so in this case, and I have 6, and I gave you the brightest and the darkest. Now I have all the shades in between, and the nice thing is that just below Lydian and just above Phrygian, I have major and minor. So major and minor are just inside, and then inside there I have Mixolydian and Dorian, and those are in between major and minor. The 2 modes I just play, Lydian and Phrygian, are not the most used because their color is so extreme. So let's say it works well for a movie scene, it works less well for a song, or at least has been picked less for a song. I mean, unless you listen to specific kind of music like progressive metal or other things where they tend to use this extreme kind of color. But again, if we stay on popular songs, not much. Okay, more commons are Dorian and Mixolydian. In fact, Dorian is so common that it's actually more common than minor for pop songs. Why? Let me play something in Aeolian, which is minor, and then let me play something in Dorian, and then you'll hear the difference. If I'm playing something in natural minor, Aeolian, okay, okay, I have something like that. That's a known sound. It's popular. Okay. Good. It's fairly dark though. It's still fairly dark. Okay, and I mean sometimes you do want to depress your listeners. Okay. This could be too dark for a pop song. So pop songs tend to use the mode that is just above minor in the order of brightness, which is Dorian. That's this D. That's this D major chord.
But your voice is getting a little quieter when you're playing the guitar. I think it's adjusting for the volume of the guitar. So maybe the volume of the guitar needs to come down a tiny bit so that people can still hear penetrating and incisive analysis that is accompanying the playing.
Play the guitar quieter. So when I play the Dorian, in this case I have A minor, I'm playing G, and then I'm playing D major. The D major, which is typical of Dorian, it's again in A Dorian, and it's not in A minor, gives you kind of the point of light, the shade of brightness inside the chord progression. If I play the same chord progression in Aeolian, I have to play A minor, G, D minor, fairly dark. Imagine writing a song with this. Now imagine writing instead a song with this. It is again slightly brighter, kind of more poppy sounding than the natural minor. It really lends itself well to a popular song. Sad, but not too sad. Okay? You've heard songs with this exact chord progression. Okay? Wicked Game by Chris Isaac has this exact chord progression. It's in a different key, but it's the same mode. Possession by Sarah McLachlan, it's has exactly this chord progression at the beginning. Then it moves to Aeolian, which is minor, and kind of the mood goes down, and it's a specific wanted choice in there. It's very deliberate. Point is, if you don't know Dorian, you don't have one of the most popular ways of writing pop songs. You don't have one of the most common sounds of pop songs. So,
or you might stumble across it by accident, but you don't know how you did it.
Yeah.
So I think what's interesting about those examples that you just played is that I think in pop songs, there's this kind of constant, or songwriting generally, there's this constant sort of oscillation between people, the listener being able to orient what's happening versus them getting bored. And in a way, being offered a greater choice of chord color kind of allows us to manage that contrast in a very moment-to-moment basis. If in a mode where we've got a lot of minor chords, there isn't quite as much opportunity harmonically to vary things in that way, to kind of create contrast in that way. So whereas Dorian got a lot of possibility of fine-tuning things bar by bar in terms of the contrast level.
Yes, I think one of the problems of songwriters today is we have a lot of theory, and a lot of knowledge on how to write music, but we have it in two very specific styles. If you want to learn theory, at the end of the day, you can learn classical theory or jazz theory. And so if you learn classical theory, you start to do a lot of things that are only in major or minor, so they don't cover the thing you want. And if you get deeper in the theory, you go into very complex extended modulations, etc., because that's the way that classical music, technically Baroque, then classical and romantic music evolved to create emotion, which is a great sound. And then occasionally it may even work on a pop song, but it has not been designed for that. That kind of harmony has been designed to create emotion over a longer time, to write longer pieces than songs. In a song, you need different technique. If you start doing stuff the classical way, you discover that you just don't have the space. A chorus is not enough space to start expressing what you want to express with that with the techniques in classical music. It's really hard, okay, because the classical music wants to evolve in a specific way, and the song form is kind of a straitjacket on that. I'm not saying that classical music is better, more complex, more emotional. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just saying it's a different thing. Pop song can be as complex, as emotional, as interesting as classical music, and they often are. If you start, so if you don't go there, then, and so you don't go for the whole super complex modulations, you go and study jazz harmony, which is a bit more modern. So occasionally you even study the modes. I mean, you should study the modes because most of jazz is in Dorian or Lydian at the end of the day, okay, over a chord, or they use those scales a lot. The problem is that they, first of all, they study it mostly for soloing and not so much for writing. But the other thing is that if you study jazz harmony, you're gonna get stuck with jazz chords for a long time, like seventh chords that have this kind of sound, which can be beautiful. I'm not saying no. But it is a very specific sound that can work in some pop music and will not work in some other pop music. Okay. So the challenge that songwriters have today is that many of them like a very specific kind of aesthetic, okay? They like triads, first of all, so no seven chords, occasionally some nines, maybe some 11th, but definitely not seven chords, so not the jazzy stuff. So you want to work mostly with triads. You want to work mostly in a key or two. You don't want to have the whole extended modulations. It's nice to know the theory. I'll say no. You would want to know a better way to change key than the thing you do either in classical or in jazz, and there are better ways and there are more modern ways. But you want a theory that helps you write verses, choruses, and bridges, because a song is made of those three things. With triads, more than a more complex kind of chords, and that gives you enough harmonic vocabulary to express yourself. You cannot just go by all the time. Lots of pop songs have been written with that. It starts to get old, okay? You want something more sophisticated than that, but again, not so much that it becomes classical music, not in the direction of several different keys connected by generally dominant chords in the classical direction, not in the way of seventh chords and circle of fifth progression that is mostly of the jazz way. You want something different. This something different does exist, okay? It's not that it doesn't exist, it's that very few people teach it because, frankly, very few people thought about it. Okay, very few people actually went and went beyond what they were shown in the books. There are plenty of theory for the songwriter, and this theory gives you so many options and so many good sounds that sound good in a pop song, and you hear them every time. Okay, so yep. You want to study something different. Now, studying modes help you to have a different, more complex sound using only triads.
Okay, well, this sounds very interesting. let's say that, like many songwriters, I might experiment with writing like with an instrument, maybe a keyboard or a guitar, and I might be using my voice, and I might be, and I'm probably going to be playing some chords underneath. Maybe I've got a riff, but maybe it's a simple chord progression. What are some ways that I might be able to experiment with modes in that kind of context, in that specific context? Like maybe I have an idea for a song, or I have an idea for a mood that I want. What might be a kind of activity I could do that would allow me to explore slightly less at random?
Well, one thing that modes can do for you is that they can help you taking either a melody or a chord progression that you have already and make it different, but still sounding very similar. It's kind of like taking the same drawing but changing the color. It's actually a pretty good metaphor, and I like it. So you could take a melody, and this melody, maybe it's in major or it's in minor, and then you just change some of the notes so that it fits a different mode. So you take the melody from major to Dorian, or from major to Lydian, or from minor to Dorian, anything, and see how it changes. And with a little bit of experience, this is hard to express only in words. I'm going to play something right now. This is hard to express only in words. So, and it's also hard to be able to do it if you just see a demonstration and you never do it yourself. So know that I'm showing it, but you're not going to get instant knowledge from that. Consider this more of a preview of what happens once you get an introductory level knowledge of the modes, okay? But you take a melody and you change the mode, and this changes the mood of the melody. These, in turn, also help you hearing the modes in general, okay? Because it kind of, if you just play the scale, if I just play, say, that's the major scale, and then I say, and that's the Lydian, you barely hear a difference. There is a difference, there's one different note, but you barely hear it. But if I take a known melody instead, now things starts to be different. So let me take a known melody, and I'm taking Joy to the World, and I'm picking this melody because this melody, the genius who wrote this handle, okay, it's the major scale going down. I mean, right, major scale. It's just the C major. I'm playing it instead. I remember original, but it's just the major scale, root to root, coming down with some rhythm in it. Right. So, what if instead of playing it in major, I play it in a mode? In fact, I'm gonna start playing it in minor. Okay, just so you hear how different it is. So again, I take the melody, C major, so C, B, A, G, F, E, C, D. And now, to change the modality of the melody, I think of playing it in C minor instead, okay, which will have C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat. And I play the same melody, but again using those different notes. And you hear it sounds pretty different.
Yeah, I think hearing them side by side like that is genius, because you can sort of still hear the shape of the melody, but you can totally immediately pinpoint how different it sounds. Yes. And if you, let's imagine this was a melody in a section of a song, and da 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 na 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 na, like we would all know something different was kind of happening. Yep. We would instantly hear that kind of quite dramatic shift in mood just conveyed by the melody.
Now, what a classical musician will do, and they do, is they play the original melody, and they play something else, then they play the melody in minor. Now, of course, they change the chord under it, and that counts as development. So it's like the same thing, but we create more music with it. That's kind of what the classical music does. They take something, and then they change the mode, and they shift it up, shift it down, play it from beginning to end, flip it over, and then with all those new pieces of music, they fit them together, and they create a long piece. They kind of feed you the same thing over and over, just transformed in different way. That's the aesthetic of classical music. We don't do that in pop music. We do this little in modern music. We can learn a lot from there, but that's not what we do. What we can do, though, is to take a melody we like, change the mode, and hear how it sounds. Or when you write a melody, you can use this to determine if you want it happier or sadder. Let's say I want this melody, but I want it brighter than that. Okay, now this is already pretty happy. Joy to the word, okay? It's already pretty happy. If I move it from major to Lydian, so up a step in the order of brightness, it's gonna sound slightly frantic. Okay, as opposed to minimal difference, but it's there. If instead I move from major down a step, I got to Mixolydian, the melody sounds this way. It's a bit more laid back. Okay, and I can move down step by step. The next step,
like sassier.
Hmm?
That's a sassier Joy to the World.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can make it bluesy at this point. No, or jazzy. Right. Anyway, we can go down one more and have it in Dorian. It's not as dramatic as the minor. But still it gets a bit of this darker sound. And then the last one missing is the Phrygian. This. That's way darker. Okay. So notice that it's not dramatically different.
So from one mode to the next, it can be quite subtle. But if you skip one or two, then you're going to notice it a lot more.
Yes. So, exactly. So then it depends what you want exactly. So you have all those shades, so you can really pinpoint exactly which one you want. You can pinpoint the exact shade of emotion you want to give. If you were using two or more of those in a song, you will not pick two close by. You will typically pick two of those further away, like major and minor, okay, to offer more contrast. Otherwise, it can just be washed away by the music. You want more contrast. But if you are pinpointing the exact emotion you want, that's something you do. So I would not use these to, I mean, you can use modes to write melody from the start. It's typically more useful to write a melody, however it comes to you, and then play it in all the modes and see which one is the best mode for the melody, or the best mode to express the feeling you want. And then you put the chords under.
And do we need to have melodies that have 7 notes in them, like Joy to the World, to do this? Or can we do this with melodies that have fewer notes?
You can do it with any kind of melody. If you have less than 7 notes, then if you don't hit all the notes in the scale, then some modes will sound the same because the mode will change one note that is not in the melody. And that's okay, because you can still hear the difference by putting the different chords under that. So you could put chords that have chords coming only from minor, or on chords coming only from Dorian, okay? Mm-hmm. And then you will still hear the difference. So again, I'm just showing this. If we were to sit down and do the whole theory thingy, I will need at least a whiteboard, okay, to at least write down the chords so that we have something in front of us to work on. And then we could start to experiment with that. And again, it's not that hard. It's just not something I would do without a captive audience, because it takes a moment to get through the whole thing. Okay. But
I've seen you demonstrate it, and I'd highly recommend anyone watching to find some of Tommaso's material online, where he breaks it down in a little bit more detail, what informs the demo that we just heard. If people want a very sort of like, I don't know, very quick, which notes should I look at first if I don't want to learn them all? Got any scale degrees that you can recommend for people?
Well, I will start taking the minor scale and playing Dorian instead. And the difference will just be take the 6th note of the scale and move it up a half step. In a minor scale, you have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. In Dorian, you will have A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. And that F sharp makes quite a bit of a difference. It's this sound here. As opposed to which is a bit harder. I mean, it's still cool, but that's the Dorian sound. That's the minor sound. Okay. You hear this again. You hear this often in pop. You hear it in fusion. You hear it in Santana. Santana is practically 2 scales. It's Dorian and harmonic minor. Okay, happy Santana, happy or happy-ish Santana, it's Dorian. Sad Santana, it's harmonic minor, give or take. Okay, and I'm not saying this, by the way, to disparage Santana. It got a lot of mileage out of those 2 scales. Okay,
I feel like Sad Santana should be a character on South Park at some point with his own little bit of theme music. But yeah, so that's very interesting. So that's kind of one thing people can have a look at right away.
Mm-hmm. So that's where I will start. I will start with Dorian. It's a very forgiving mode to start with. And again, when you play chords, you get the 4th chord. It becomes major. So in a minor scale, the 4th chord is minor. So in A minor, the D chord is minor. In Dorian, the 4th is major. So in A Dorian, the D is major. And you've heard this sound, okay? Now, so you want to get maybe a chart of all the chords in Dorian. I can give them to you right now. You're gonna have A minor, B minor, not used much, C major, D major, E minor. Then I have an F sharp, which is not really used much, or it can be used, but it's a bit tricky to use. And then you have G major. So if you ignore the half diminished, you have 6 usable chords: A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, and G major. Start from the A minor, end on the A minor, play that A minor quite often, actually. Now you're playing in Dorian. The hardest chord to use in this set is the B minor. If sounds weird to you, avoid it. Okay, please use the other. You still have a lot of color to be found in there. Okay. And that will be just writing in pure Dorian. Then later, you can also work in mixing 2 modes, because that's the other thing. Just because we have the pure color of every mode doesn't mean we cannot mix them. We can also take 2 modes and put them together, or 3 or 4, okay? And so we can take one chord from A minor and some chord from A Dorian. The important point is that both of them start with the same note, A. So this is not a license to do literally everything. You can always do literally everything in music. But I mean, if I'm telling you do literally everything, that's hardly useful to you right now, right? So the recipe is take, once you know a little bit how Dorian works and you play a few of those chords, and once you know how the natural minor scale works and play a few of those chords and create a few chord progression, well, take both of them and start mixing the chords. So we can have A minor, it's in both A minor and A Dorian. G, it's in both A minor and A Dorian, because some chords are in both. D major from A Dorian, F major from A minor, not in Dorian. But I mean, if you're a singer, you're already doing this by ear. If that on this D major sing A Dorian, and on this F sing A minor, natural minor. But again, if you sing, you naturally are gonna sing the correct scale, because this is not theory in the sense of something we invented and imposed on musician. This is theory in the sense we had a lot of musicians doing this, okay, and that's what they do naturally. We just found what they are doing and explained it, okay. This is not really a modern thing, okay. The Dorian scale, again, I know people like calling it mod. I like calling it scale because it's a scale, okay. The Dorian scale is documented in folk music from before, even before natural minor existed, okay. Some people pick it up by ear, or because they come from a place in which their folk music uses Dorian, say Ireland, okay. Lots of Ireland or Scottish music. I know it's not the same, just but on both sides of the Isles contain Dorian scales. So the Dorian chords, the Dorian scale, and it's not that those people sat down and say we're going to make a song in Dorian. That's just what they naturally sing. They like the sound of that. Okay.
Yeah, what's also interesting about those kind of Celtic traditions is that when we're talking that, well, there's a whole, apart from the songs with vocal parts, there's all the fiddle music. And that comes in 8-bar sections. And there's always an A part and a B part. And very often, in order to kind of like give the dancers a lift, it's always going to be in a different key. Now, it might just go from like runs around the cycle effects, might go from A and the next tune's in D. But very often it's going to go from like a major to a minor, or it's going to go from a Mixolydian to a Dorian, or it's going to go from a major to a Mixolydian. And that so that's something that kind of provides the refreshing change into the next little tune.
Exactly. So here's one of the songwriting techniques that we can use is that we know a song is typically verse, chorus, and bridge. And you can decide, rather than writing everything in A minor, maybe I'm writing the chorus in A Dorian. Okay, or maybe I'm writing the verse in A Dorian, the chorus in A minor, and the bridge in something else.
Okay? Sure, and I just want to kind of make sure it's really apparent for people that we can achieve that by changing one chord.
Exactly.
So always like, well, the verse is going to might be in A minor, and then A Dorian and A minor, and then the chorus might be in A Dorian. It just would, in the case of Dorian, it's going to be from D minor to D. Yes. So again, we might not be using all the chords.
No.
But we can just use the ones that tell us we're in a different mode.
Yeah.
And it would take a bit longer for you to be able to work that out, although it's completely possible to learn how to do that. If you've never done it before, and if you're interested in doing that, I'd recommend all Tommaso's material, including he has an amazing course called Master of the Modes. But you can just remember one or two little things, and they're like, oh, I'm going to instantly get a Dorian vibe if I've got like my one minor chord and then the 4 is not minor, the 4 is major instead. That's going to instantly give me Dorian vibes. Like ding, 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 ding. What's that Pink Floyd one called?
That
ding,
one.
Ding, ding.
You know what? I like to illustrate that. It depends what the original key is with G.
I feel like that might be A minor and D.
You have G, F, a B flat, and an E that kind of sounds the G Dorian. Yeah. If G is root, it kind of sounds like a G Dorian.
Do you have some favorite modal pop songs or riffs or things that people might recognize and not know that those are kind of like a classic example of a Dorian?
Well, again, my classic example is always Wicked Game by Chris Isaak. It's everybody knows that. Okay, and it's in Dorian, and it's 3 chords in Dorian. And it's actually the perfect model for that, because if you were playing the same song in Eolian, it would be too sad. And if you're playing it in Mixolydian, it would be
you
too
need that bittersweetness, not just like hardcore misery.
Yes, exactly. I mean,
It needs to be that.
The original, if I remember well, is Italian.
What are we going to play?
Now, if I was playing this in New Orleans, that would sound different because this E would have to become an E minor. It's too dark. It's too dark.
Yeah. Well, at that point, we've just gone down into the bottom of a well and we're never coming out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a happy song, but
It's not regret.
Exactly.
It's kind of it's like utter degradation.
Exactly. So you see, it's kind of, if I can allow to be said, that it's kind of a very emotional, intelligent chord. Okay, there.
Sure.
It's just put it in like, yeah, this happened, but it's not exactly regret. Okay. So, and instead, if you were playing this in Mixolydian, it will start in B major. And it will be too happy, but it's not that happy. Okay. So it's like they got exactly the right mode to express exactly that right feeling. Okay. So plenty of things like that. I mean, there are examples for everything here. I don't know, Crazy Little Thing Called Love for Mixolydian. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, it's kind of a American sounding song. So I'm not. It's written in a specific style, but it's the example that everybody knows. Okay, so
Yeah, if there's kind of, I think a lot of fans of CCR, lots of those songs are Mixolydian.
yeah.
And there are some pop songs that are, I'm writing like that. There are definitely loads of pop songs that are kind of ones that have that like little sassy soul edge, very often Mixolydian. And so if people want to try this out, then like a great way to start that maybe doesn't involve you having to understand everything, although it is worth your while understanding everything. Just like Google take one key and Google what's the chords in A Mixolydian and what's chords in A Dorian, and then or take a chord progression that you already have, perhaps based on Tommaso's earlier suggestion, and then whatever you think the home chord is, whatever the kind of way you're resolving that chord progression to or starting it from, you feel like that's a home chord. Google what are the Mixolydian chords in that thing. So let's say you're going back to G all the time and G feels like the key. You could just Google what are the G Mixolydian chords, what are the G Dorian chords, and then look at the chords in your progression, and you can then alter them so that if it was like G, A minor, C, D, you're then going to see what the G, A, C, D chords are in the different modes, and you're going to switch them out and see how that sounds. And that's a kind of quite immediately actionable. It'll take you like 5 minutes to do that. You're instantly going to hear things change. And if you like to play chords and improvise melodic motifs with your voice over the top, that will immediately give you some different ways of doing that. Are there any other kind of like advice you give people for like working with chords from a modes point of view, or do you think that pretty much?
But my advice would be, don't get scared by the complex names, and don't get scared if things look complex at first. It always reduce it to, what can I play on my guitar right now? What can I play on my piano right now? What can I do right now? And hear that. There's plenty of modes that, because we talk only about the mode of the major scale, but there are other sets of modes of the harmonic minor, the melodic minor, of other scales. There's a lot more to be discovered here. So if you're starting with the mode of melodic minor, you're gonna get all those technical names like, I don't know, Aeolian dominant or Mixolydian flat 6. It's the same scale. Two names are the same. That sound wonderful. Actually, if you look at the slow part in 10 Years Gone, there's something similar going on. That's the sound of Aeolian dominant. And again, it all looks incredibly complex at first because there are the complex names. They give you the complex theory. They tell you it's like an Aeolian scale with a major scale, and you're like, no, that's too much. But if you just are able to reduce it down to the chords or down to some simple things you can play, and then you can hear the sound, then it's just a sound, okay? You don't have to understand the whole theory behind it yet. For the first step is always hear it. Do you like it? If you like it, do something with that, even if you don't understand the whole thing. Write a little song, write a little melody. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to even break the rules, even if you don't know them yet, okay? Just make some sound. Once you know in what direction you like things, okay, you like the brightest mode, you like the darkest mode, you like the modes of the melodic minor, you like something else, even if you don't know what a melodic minor is or what a mode is yet, you consider those kind of like direction indication, like I need to study in that direction or I need to study in that other direction, then go deeper in that. Don't think you need to know all the modes. Don't think you need to know all the theory. Don't think you need to know how to explain the whole thing. The important point is that you know what sounds are associated with that name, and you should never be afraid to break that. Those are recipes, guys. It's like getting a big fat cookbook and go like, I would like to try that. And then you cook it, and maybe you like it, maybe you don't. And then you keep cooking. And eventually, once you cook enough stuff on the cookbook, you're like, you know what? I like part of this and I like part of that, and I'm going to modify this thing and make my own recipe. That happens naturally. It's not an extra effort. You don't have to know culinary theory to do that. And it's pretty much the same here. You should consider theory as a giant cookbook of what all the composers before you wrote down. Like, hey, I found something cool here, and that's a cool sound you can use. It's just that we started giving strange and complex name to it. And then we started giving more advice to people. And this more extra advice can come in a complex language. But really, very little of it is actually really complex. Just start from what you can do. That's the advice.
Well, I love this, because that was going to be my next question. If we want to, how do we start simply? What if we want to just bring in a new color for a section or a phrase? And really, if I'm recapping some of your earlier points, we can do that, but just by changing a D minor to a D major. That can be enough.
Yep.
So, or by adding, like, I think if I had to think of 3 quite useful modal color changes, that Dorian 1 minor to 4 major would be one. And then if you're in a major key and you've got a major chord progression and you put in a flat 7 chord, that's an instant color change. It might be suddenly, and it's so easy to play. So you could be in the key of A and you could just go to a G. So that's another very easy one. Do you have any other favorite, like, cheat code, extra modal flavor chords that we can give people? So we've given them
the Mixolydian chord is always the major chord under the root chord, 2 frets under the root chord. If you're playing in Mixolydian, G is your Mixolydian chord.
Yeah, it sounds sassy.
Yep.
It doesn't say sound. Down, and all the others.
Yeah, again, see, that's the other thing. Examples are important, but you don't want to fix too much on the examples, because Dorian can sound like a lot of things, and Mixolydian can sound like a lot of things. And if you get stuck with one example, then you can start thinking, okay, Mixolydian is used by blues players, Led Zeppelin, and all that kind of musicians. And then maybe you never use it because you're into something different. But all the modes work
we definitely don't want to get into a silo whereby, oh, well, that's what that sound is, and I'm not that sound, so I'm not going to use it.
Exactly.
It's like, that's what they did with it, but.
Yeah, instead, what you should do is get to know as many modes as possible, because they're all different sounds. It's like getting to know a new color if you're a painter, and then do something with that. And kinda all the modes work in all the styles. I mean, some more, some less, some are harder to fit in, some are more natural to fit in, but you could write in any mode, in any style. Take your style, pick a mode, and see if you can write something in your style with that color.
Okay, you have to go home now and write a calypso, a Phrygian calypso, or a Lydian calypso or a Phrygian calypso. You get to choose. Now that's if we're going to give people one, if we're going to wrap up and give people one practical exercise that they can try directly after the stream if they want to, or directly after seeing this clip, what do you reckon is a great little exercise to try? Would it be this thing that we spoke about earlier of getting chords to a song you already have and switching them out?
I would write the chords in all the modes in A Lydian, okay. A Ionian, A Mixolydian, etc. That's already an exercise in theory, but again, you can Google them.
You can Google
them. Write all those chords and write them in a parallel way. So all the A chords, all the B chords, all the C chords, and the D chords, so that you have a clear idea on how those things work. And then I would try to play the same chord progression, but in different modes, and hear the difference.
Yeah,
hearing cool. Here is the key. I mean, you need to hear that. You need to play. And by the way, you need to hear it not with somebody else playing it. You need to hear it coming from your instrument. It's important because until you hear it coming from your instrument, you really haven't heard it yet.
Yes. So that is our recommendation for everybody. Now, not only has Tommaso blessed us with a wealth of significantly valuable knowledge, he also has a free download, which he can tell us about just now. In fact, I think
this is a completely free ebook on how to create classic guitar solos. Of course, you can do more than that than just classic guitar solos. In fact, if you're a singer, why don't you take it and try to sing those things? The idea is that those are 18 tips. Every one of them is really simple, and you don't even need to learn all of them. You can learn 2 or 3 of them. When people try to learn classic guitar solos, they have all those licks that they learn, and they go like, okay, I have these, or I have these, or I have whatever. I have all this kind of classic thing, and they create a big vocabulary of these, but then they struggle applying these in actual guitar solos. In this ebook, I'm showing you the building blocks of licks, meaning I'm showing you how those licks came to be, what is the actually underlying level of it, so that it's simpler to learn. And then with 1 or 2, again, 2 or 3 of those tips, you can come up with dozens and dozens and dozens of licks, and they start to feel more yours than something you learn or copy from another guitar solo. So I maintain it's a better way to learn to do those classic solos. And again, if you are a singer, if you're a piano player, there's plenty in here that will work on your instrument too. You just need to translate it. You just need to read the score rather than reading the tablature and try to play it on your instrument.
Yes, singing things like this is going to make your melody writing much, much better. I'm sorry to tell you all.
There's plenty of piano licks that are totally copied from guitar playing. You know, like this stuff on the piano works beautifully too. So just copy those. Okay?
The only way that this could be any better would be if you put your head behind it and it all instantly went into your brain. But I have to tell you that my head is behind it right now, and it has not all gone instantly into my brain. So you do have to actually clear it. Sorry about that. But you can download it from this here QR code as well, and you can see the link, which I will paste into the chat, but I'll give you a couple of seconds to grab that if you want to. I also have something for you. This is just 5 ways to write great lyrics. It's all the things I wished I'd known about writing lyrics when I first started out. It took me, like 10 years to learn. And just like how you can develop your ideas, what to do if you write something and you get stuck and you don't know what to write next, what to do if you write something and you really wanted it to communicate very powerfully, but it sort of feels a bit flat somehow. You said the thing, you mean the thing you said, but it just seems kind of lame. Why is that? How can I make it better? How you can get better as a lyricist outside of simply writing songs, like what it means to have a writing practice, how to think about nurturing your mindset and your skill set as a lyricist, how to audit what you like from your favorite songs and the music that's influenced you the most, and just generally how to be sustainable as a writer. So do grab that if you want. Those are both going to be there. Right. How do I get rid of it? Hide. There we go. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much indeed, Tommaso, for coming on the channel. It's always an absolute treat. I really appreciate it. And I know anyone watching this is going to have got a great deal out of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Diana, for having me.